Hi, this is John Stoddard, Top M&A Podcast. I have a guest today. Is Joe Valli. Joe Valli is from the founder of Quiet Light Brokerage. It sells online businesses and only online businesses. So, Joe, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good to be here, John. Good to be here. Glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
So, I want to go back. You and I probably first talked 4 to 5 years ago when I was trying to sell my e-commerce company, selling hearing aids. And then you said, nah, it's not right for us. I don't remember what the conversation was, but it just wasn't ready to be sold because I just didn't have any processes in place, mechanics in place. Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I do. Now that you bring it up, I have a recollection of it. Be honest with you, I've talked to about 8,000 entrepreneurs over the last 9 years. So I can't remember the individual conversations, but I can tell you that there's not many that had hearing aid based businesses. It was very unique at the time. But yes, quite some time ago.
So Joe, let me ask you how you got started in this. I mean, you're an entrepreneur by trade or just because you love it. I mean, how did you get started in this?
Yeah. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been self-employed since 1997, John. I'm an old guy, get some gray on my chin. And I was, when I left my last company that I worked for, I really had a choice. It came down to, I should probably move on and get to my own business, because if I don't, I'm probably going to get fired, right? I had been promoted to my own level of incompetence, and I had some bosses that had, without question, been promoted to theirs. And it just wasn't the same company that I worked at when I started in 1994. We went from, I was employee number 34, and we went from 34 people in January of 1994 to well over 1,000 by the time I left in September of 97. So it was an epic journey. It was great fun, but I needed to move on. And I did that in the fall of 97, started my own media buying agency for direct response radio clients. Within a year, I launched my own product on radio. Within a year, I launched a television infomercial. And then I repeated that again. And that last product that I developed was a digestive wellness program. And I took it 100% online in 2005, and then took it through the best of and the worst of that economy. Came out the other end tired, frustrated, needed to move on in 2010, and connected with Quiet Light and sold my online business through Quiet Light. And then I joined the team. So I wasn't actually the original founder. My business partner, Mark, founded it in 2007. And then I joined it after I sold my own e-commerce business in 2010. And he and I are now partners.
What's a digestive wellness? What is that?
All right. Well, it really started out as a colon cleansing product. If you really want to gross your folks out listening.
Okay. So, yeah. So no, anybody that's over 50 years old starts having this conversation where a doctor's going to be inside their butt at some point.
Yeah. No, it's not soup prep. Like my wife just had her colonoscopy, and it's quite the process. But this was, I was 29 years old working at that company that I mentioned, and I was single. Living in Portland, Maine, where there's more bars per capita than almost any other city in the country, eating terribly, having a great time, living the life. And we were selling this type of product through a radio and TV spot ads and infomercials. And I used it, and I'm like, there's just no way I should feel this good. Given what I'm putting in my body with alcohol and junk food, I feel amazing. Why do I feel so good? And I said to myself, if I ever go out on my own, I'll launch a product like that. It wasn't the first product I launched. It was the second. And then it went from that to a full digestive wellness center where we wrote good quality content over the course of 5 years, specific to the different processes in the digestive process, from the mouth to, the eventual exit.
So you were kind of like, you were focusing on the copy and the offer, how great that has to be. I mean, the Dan Kennedy and the big guys that write copy.
Yeah, all we did was write good quality copy over 5 years, and Google rewarded us. We did spend money on pay-per-click because we did have a product or a product line, and it just paid off over time. It's patience. It's being as helpful as possible and educating the potential consumer on whatever ailment they're doing a research on. It wasn't pitching them products. It was very subtle, giving them the information they wanted, along with an opportunity to look at a supplement option if that was the route that they wanted to take.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I just went to the doctor and just did my checkup, and a couple of things were high on my metrics. So you really start thinking about, I need to change my HDL. Less meat, less trans fat, less processing stuff. So there's that timing is perfect because you don't see those ads before that, and then when you start thinking about it, you start buying stuff.
Oh, all you have to do is talk about it with your phone around, and you'll get ads served to you by Google. It happens to me all the time. It's a little creepy now. Back in 2005 when I started, it was a little less competition, much easier in many ways, but very, very different also.
And you sold that to Quiet Light through Quiet Light.
Through Quiet Light, yeah, I sold it through Quiet Light. I had my initial conversation with Mark in the spring of 2010. And he's, one of 3 brokerage firms that I talked to at the time. The other 2 were just trying to reach through the phone to get their hooks into me for a commission. And Mark delved into my P&Ls, looked at my ABEX schedule, firmed up my discretionary earnings, and said, hey, based upon trends, things are coming back rapidly. You're growing again after shrinkage in 2009, right, where the worst of the economy was. You might want to give it another 6 months before you sell, because it's going to be in your best interest if you do that. And he showed me the numbers based upon my growth. And I thought, this is a guy I got to work with. He's actually telling me to go away because it's in my best interest. And that's exactly what I did. And I came back 6 months later. Jason ended up being my advisor at the time. Jason Yelowitz, he's still with Quiet Light.
Yeah, Jason. I've talked to Jason. Yeah.
He's still here, man. He was my advisor back then, and he's just a great guy. Become a good friend over the years.
Did Mark tell you, did you prescribe anything, or did you said wait for the trends to turn around?
He educated me. He educated me without a doubt on all the strengths and weaknesses of the business at the time, what buyers want, what they fear, what I needed to prepare for, the eventual exit in terms of due diligence and SOPs that would make my life easier after the sale. Basically everything I needed to know, to have a better exit when the time came. And that was the key differentiator. He really helped me and educated me as much as he could.
I think you and a couple other people asked me, I was looking to sell my business at that time. And a few people asked me, how much time, the metrics were okay. It wasn't great, but you asked me how much time I spent on the business. And I said something like 50, 60 hours. And I don't know if it was you or somebody else just said, that's too much, because I'm selling other businesses that are, pulling 400,000 a year and they're only working 4 hours a month. I think that's an exaggeration.
Yeah.
But the point was, you said you got to have a system in place.
Yeah. A individual owner operator that wants to buy your business doesn't want to buy it and work 60 hours a week. They may early on because they're drinking through a fire hose in terms of their learning. But ultimately, most of these e-commerce or online businesses, whether it's content, SaaS, or a physical product, are operated in less than 40 hours a week.
And you joined the Quiet Light brokerage, and how did that go? Were you just saying, I'm trying to understand, a lot of people go, I'm just going to keep buying and then selling business. And I want to keep growing these business, or I'm going to create a portfolio of them and then take it bubbly or sell it to private equity.
Yeah.
Why did you want to get into a transactional type of mode?
I'd already had 6 acquisitions and exits under my belt at that point, and I got into the stage in my life where I didn't want to climb that hill again. I'd been there, done that, had my success, and it was a point where I wanted to help others. And that's really the team at Quiet Light. Everybody's a very successful online entrepreneur. They've all built, bought, or sold their own online business, and this is just their next adventure. It's different, right? The benefit of the role is that there's for an advisor, there's no overhead, right? You don't need working capital. You don't have money tied up in inventory. You just help. Now that's the key thing and a differentiator. They're not salespeople. They're advisors that have the experience, they've been there, done that, and they're here to help first and foremost. And that, in many cases, will lead to, hey, look, John, I don't think it's in your best interest to sell right now. You need to fix this, and that. And then when you're ready, when you're going to have your exit, it's going to be bigger and stronger. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday I've known for several years. And he's been running his business for 10 years. And a couple of things happen in the business where he's just tired and frustrated. And he's like, this happened and I'm ready to move on. And I said, okay, well, what was your original exit goal? And it was $5 million. I said, okay. And what are you hoping to sell it for right now? He goes, I would take 2. And we went through the whys of why he would take 2 now versus, getting through a rough patch and how to get through it and set a goal and reverse engineer a path to it. And now he's got to make a decision whether he wants to fix the things that need to be fixed and live to fight another day and have that $5 million exit, or only take, a small portion of that, not be able to be done, right? The $5 million exit for him would be done. He'd be like, okay, I'm good. I'm done. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want for the rest of my life. He's in his 50s already. So if he just does that short exit now, he's going to have to continue to work for another 5 to 7 years. And we just went through the whole process with him and give him the tools to make the best decision for him, not talk him into listing his business for sale.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And that's what we do with everybody.
And the economics are sort of more like buying a house. I mean, you're 100% commission, right? You're not.
Yeah. We're not an investment banking firm where they take a retainer and a flat fee to start with, and then a monthly retainer until the business is sold. And that retainer is non-refundable. We are success-based advisors. So we only get paid if the business sells. And, it's an exploding niche in the M&A world. Granted, we've been at it since 2007 when Mark founded the company, but 14 years later, it's really catching on. We've had strong year-over-year growth, and it's just the right place at the right time. And we don't have to pitch or sell people, where the pipeline is big enough and long enough where we just want to have the best brand and reputation and help people first and foremost. And it's a strange thing, but the more people you help, the better your brand and reputation, and the more your business grows in the long run. And it grows the right way, as opposed to focusing in on that commission, that next one, just trying to get the numbers in instead of truly helping people. It's a strange thing. As you get a little gray in your chin, you realize the more people you can help and benefit, the more it's going to benefit you as well. And that's basically the approach.
Yeah, you can't help somebody else without helping yourself. That's a nice parable, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I noticed on your website, man, you're really moving up in the revenue size. There's much larger businesses when there was. I mean, I looked at 5 years ago, and you're like, $100,000 business or $1 million business. You're talking about $29 million businesses.
Yeah, we that first full calendar year when I was an advisor, I did like a total of 23 transactions, which is just nuts at this point, looking back in history. And I think the average transaction size might have been $125,000, $150,000.
Wow.
Today, the average transaction size is, just sub $2 million. But we generally do anything between 250 to 25. But as I said earlier, the 25 is creeping up. We keep getting pulled in that direction. And it's because of people that we've connected with. And, their business is just growing, and we grow with them in that relationship. And then when they're ready, the business value just simply might be higher. And I have no doubt in my mind. I was talking to the team the other day. I've sold personally about 100 million in transactions. The team collectively about a $500 million, and that's going to change pretty rapidly. But I think in the next 24 months, we'll have someone on the team that will close 100 million in transactions on their own. And it could just be 4 transactions where each of them are 25 million. It's starting to happen. We didn't think we'd want to play in the 8-figure exit business. But I had one that was just under 8 figures, about $9 million. And the reality is that they're not all that different than the ones that are, $1 million or 5 million. The $10 million ones are very similar. The 25 million, your buyers may be different, but we're dealing with people that have raised, hundreds of millions of dollars now and looking at these businesses. And so they're
different type of buyer now. Before it was somebody that, I had $100,000 in cash, or I went and got an SBA loan, or it's seller financing. Now you're looking at somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm still in the M&A business, looking for business too. But if I could put up 500,000, but I still have to find another $5 million to raise it, I'm going to go to a lender or private equity or family office.
Yeah, most people have that lined up before they make an offer, right? Because they have to these days. If they don't have that lined up, they're not going to get the business, simply because in today's market, there, are multiple offers on most businesses that we list. We have more buyers than sellers, especially when it comes to an FBA business, because of the aggregators. I think year to date, on average, we've had something like 4.6 offers on every listing. 60% of them have gone at or over asking price.
So how many do you have? 4 to 5 offers on an FBA business?
Yeah, on average, year to date.
And it's because of those aggregators that have cash in their pocket and they're ready to put it down.
Yeah. And individual buyers as well. Everybody's competing against each other now. But there's a lot more aggregators with, yes, they have cash, John, but they're not making all cash offers, even though they say they are, for the most part. Some of them are having to step up there because they're competing against other aggregators and do that. But generally, what they want to do is put as little cash into it as possible. So if you're selling a business for, $1 million to an aggregator, they may get you $600,000 in cash at closing, a $200,000 earnout, and a $200,000 stability payment. And then they also want, you to give them a couple of months worth of inventory for free. That's where they get their working capital peg. It's creative to say it nicely.
I haven't heard this term. What's the stability payment?
Yeah, if you look it up, you Google it, you're not going to find it. It's something that they've created, and now originally Thras created it, and now all the others are using it as well. Basically, it states, John, if I buy your business and it's doing $1 million in revenue in the trailing 12 months when I buy the business, we're going to hold back 20% of the purchase price, or in this case, $200,000, as a stability payment. 12 months after I own the business, if the business is within 90% of that million, I'm going to pay you that $200,000. If it's below the 90%, you're not going to get it. So they're hedging their bets, trying to make sure they don't buy a business that falls off the cliff. You're counting on them to do at least 90% in order to get your $200,000. So, in the book, I go through that in great detail. There's things that you have to do as a seller to make sure that you don't go from 90% or 200,000 to zero, right? You've got to step it down. 85 to 90%, you're going to get 150, 80 to 85%, you're going to get 100, and so on and so forth. And then try to create some upside for yourself as well.
Is that included in the offer, the purchase price, or is that a bonus on top of it?
No. It's not a bonus. It's not a bonus. No, it's not. They're only going to pay the 200 if it's part of the purchase price. So you're not in that scenario. You would get $600,000 in cash, a $200,000 stability payment if the business is doing 90% of the same revenue 12 months out, and then a $200,000 earnout as a percentage of, they're going to shoot for gross profit or EBITDA, which you don't want to do either.
And how do you reconcile where, the seller is staying in the business partially, or the new owner is running the business?
No. The new owner, in this case, if it's an aggregator, they're running the business.
Okay.
They're running the business. So one of the things I recommend to sellers, if they're selling on their own or through a firm like Twilight, they've got any kind of stability payment or earnout, they should retain view-only access to the reporting software or to Seller Central.
Okay.
Right. So that they can sleep better at night and look at the numbers, right? Other things you want to do, if you've got any kind of stability payment or earnout or anything in there that's tied to their success when they're running the business, you want to make sure that they don't run out of inventory. So if you've got a stability payment or earnout, you've got to have a clause in there that says, if during any 2-week period in the 12 months or whatever the earnout period, if you run out of inventory on XYZ SKU for 2 weeks, all bets are off. You owe me in full, because these guys are growing like crazy, right? Take Thras, for example. These guys are really good people, right? But they're growing like crazy, and they're just trying to find bodies to manage things. Those bodies, those people, those individuals that are, doing inventory management are not going to care as much about making sure they never run out of inventory as you are, the business owner. Yes, they've got more cash, but they've got people that are employees instead of owners that are not as passionate about it. And it's going to happen at some point where they're going to run out of inventory. And if you've got a stability payment tied to, revenue, but they run out of inventory for a 4-week period, and you hit that 88% instead of that 90%, it's not your fault. It's theirs because they screwed up. So you should get paid in full. So you got to have a clause like that in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I was a seller and I said, well, look, I don't know about this stability payment because I've grown the business 5 years consistently every year, inventories, and you want me to, you're going to judge me or grade me on some kind of stability payment, that happens in a year.
All they did was create something that sounded interesting or good so that they didn't have to give you as much cash at closing. The more cash they get to hold on to, the more businesses they buy, the lower multiple cash wise they're putting up front. It's very creative. These guys are smart. They're well educated. They're likable. You would enjoy going out to dinner with them or having a drink with them. They're good people.
But that's the point of being a buyer, shrewd allocation of capital. And yes. I'm not going to put as much as possible down on the payment as I can because I got to conserve the cash for something else. It could be inventory.
Right. Yeah. Right. And early on, the likes of Thrasio, again, good people, had their way. Right. Today, there's, 50, 60 aggregators that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, 4 billion collectively. Some have only raised 10 million, but they're all competing against each other. So we're now seeing closer to true all cash offers, and the multiples are going up substantial on these types of businesses.
Now, do these guys? Just curious. Do these guys, these funds, do they expect you to present pocket offers, or they just say,
no,
wait till you clean it up?
That's not in our best interest, in our client's best interest. Let's say I took you on as a client and all I'm going to do is present it to one aggregator. That's like showing up to the Shark Tank to pitch your brand and everybody calls in sick but Mr. Wonderful. What kind of deal are you going to get? Right? Not a good one. You're going to get a royalty deal. It's not going to work in your best interest. So no, they all have to compete against each other in order to get you the best
the seller
value
the best
and
price.
The best deal structure. Yeah. That's the problem with, when the chapter 13 in the Entrepreneur's Playbook is specifically geared towards working with aggregators and negotiating with them. It's so flat. I talked to somebody this morning, I had coffee with him locally here. He's been running his business for 20 years and somebody has approached him, an investment banking firm, to buy his business. We're talking many, many millions of dollars into the 8 figures. And, as he said, a very successful entrepreneur like this, he said, it's flattering and it piques your interest. And there's no question I'm going to, explore it. The thing that he is smart enough to do is to make sure he's exploring it with others as well. He's not going to just talk to one of them. With the individual Amazon FBA business owners, they get flattered because one of these aggregator reaches out to them. And then they're dealing with just this aggregator. That aggregator knows at the moment there's no competition amongst the other aggregators to buy this particular business. So they're not going to pay the best value for it. We had a situation recently through QuietLight where one of the aggregators made an offer on a business pre-listing at QuietLight. They made an offer without us involved of about $2 million. A very strong business, very attractive business. The owner of that business ended up talking with a member of our team, signed an engagement letter, listed it. We had 8 offers. We sold it for $5.5 million.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Huge, huge difference.
Seller says, thank you, Joe. Yeah. Thank
yes.
you.
The seller said, thank you. Not actually, she said, thank you, Chuck. But you know, that's when you're dealing with one, you're not going to get the best offer. So why pitch just to Mr. Wonderful, or why only negotiate with that one aggregator that reached out to you that really has a true interest in your business? Yes, it's flattering, but it's not the best for all the time, energy, effort, risk that you took as an entrepreneur. You haven't taken all that much cash out of these businesses. If it's physical product, you're just keeping up with inventory. It's really not in your best interest to just work with one of them. You're not going to get the best deal or deal structure.
Yeah, you need an auction. I mean, to get the best price as a seller. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, as a part of the challenge with a podcast like this, or a conversation like, you know, like this that I have with one seller, is that it's way too much information to absorb all at once. So, you know, I've talked to, as I said before we started recording, about 8,000 individual entrepreneurs over the last 9 years. And there's so much information to absorb in those conversations that I couldn't, they're so nuanced, and I couldn't talk to enough people, right? Because there's probably 8 million that could use the information. So that was the point of writing the Exitpreneur's Playbook. It takes an entrepreneur in the online world all the way from, hey, I'm thinking about selling my business. How do I prepare it? How do I train? How do I get trained on how to sell this? All the way through to, you know, the closed transaction. It's everything you need to know from A to Z. And it's written in a way that, you know, it's called the Playbook. So it's written in a way with lots of sports analogies. The simplest one is that, you know, you don't want to wake up and just run a marathon or a 5K. Let's just stick with a 5K, right? You could probably pull it off, but you're not going to finish well, and you're going to pay the price the next day, right? It's the same thing. If you don't train for your exit, you just wake up and decide to sell, or wake up and accept an offer from an aggregator, you're going to pay the financial price, right? And you're going to have pain afterwards, because the deal structure is not going to be good. So you got to choose the right pain. Do you want to have the pain of that poor deal structure and poor price and dealing with stuff after closing? Or do you want to choose the pain of getting some training, understanding the value of your greatest asset, your business, and prepare for it and exit well at maximum value with no catches on the back end? Nothing that's going to keep you awake at night.
Yeah. So let's, you mentioned this a couple of times, and you told me about this, but you've got a book coming out called Exitpreneur's Playbook, and that's coming out June 15th.
June 15th. Yeah. Next Tuesday.
Available through your site and Amazon.
Yeah. Exitpreneur.io, where we also share lots of other tips and information, but you can just go to Amazon and just search Exitpreneur. It's a new word, I guess. Instead of entrepreneur, it's Exitpreneur. And the book will be there in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover as well.
Beautiful. And it's all talking about how to prepare your business just to get basically the best price at sale.
Yeah. This isn't going to teach you how to, you know, build your online business in terms of, you know, marketing funnels and so on and so forth. That's not what this is about. This is about you understanding the value of what is likely your most valuable asset, how to set an exit goal, and how to reverse engineer a path to it. It's everything you need to know, from the thought of that all the way through to the eventual exit.
So that brings me back to my business that's selling hearing aids. You know, I was spending 50, 60 hours on the business. And then I was told by you, and I think a couple other people, you're spending too much time. You got to put systems in place. I'm looking forward to reading this book, but tell me how that, you know, if you could diagnose and say.
Yeah, we break it down in there as well. You know, I talk about, you know, here's what a buyer is going to say in that situation. They're going to say, John, look, I love your business. I think it's fantastic, but, you know, I'm not working 60 hours a week, and I'm not going to hire somebody that's going to be the CEO of it. And they're not going to work 60 hours a week. So what I have to do is I have to hire somebody to make up that other 20 hours. And I only hire Americans, and I only pay $25 an hour for that work, or $50 an hour, whatever. They are in control of making that decision on how many hours they're going to allocate to that new person that's going to pick up some of the extra work that you do. And they're going to determine how much that's going to cost. Whereas if you train for your exit, you're going to go, okay, I know that's going to be a problem. This is what buyers fear, is this workload. I'm going to have to pick certain things and outsource it. I'm going to hire a VA, or I'm going to be in control of who that person is that's hired and how much I pay them. You might be able to hire a really qualified, well-educated person from the Philippines for $5 an hour or $10 an hour and overpay them, right? So they're incredibly loyal. And you may find that you're now working 30 hours a week. That's going to make your business much more attractive to buyers, and they're not going to look for an adjustment to the discretionary earnings for that additional payroll that they would need to pay someone else. You're in control of that dollar amount instead of them, and you're in control of the hours that somebody else works instead of them.
Well, I kind of wish that book was around earlier, because it took me about a year to fix that.
Yeah. Well, look, we had conversations about it, and you had conversations with other people as well. It's hard to absorb those conversations. Look, I've been on podcasts like this. I know what I know because I do it every day, right? And I've done it thousands of times. And sometimes I talk about it so casually that it just goes over somebody's head. And I've been on podcasts where I've explained something. Somebody asked me a question, I explain it. And then at the end of the podcast, they try to reiterate it and it doesn't come out right. Right. And it's not because they're ignorant. It's because it's complex. They're experts at, in this case, that particular individual is an expert on selling on Amazon, but not an expert on, making that Amazon business as valuable as possible to buyers.
Well, there's I'll be honest with you. There's a couple emotional parts in there. There's ego in there. There's all kinds of fear, worry, and doubt that just do not penetrate inside when somebody else is telling you what you should be doing, because they saw it 8,000 other times.
Well, that's why it's in the book, right? I think that you'll be able to look at it and read it and go, okay, that makes sense. And here's 3 examples from his experience and clients whose names have been changed to protect the innocent, right? There's tons of examples of people's success stories and some epic failures, including my own. They're both in there. And so everything you hear from other people and you retain part of it, and you're like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, but let me work through that. It's all here now. And then there's math and logic associated with it. And that's the key, is that you're going to be able to understand how to get a pretty close ballpark calculation of your discretionary earnings, and then a ballpark value of what that business would be worth. And then that kind of gets a little bit more exciting, because you just can't, as an entrepreneur, we just sort of march along and we're on that hamster wheel and you can't get off, right? And you have good days and you have bad days. But if you're working towards a goal, like everything else in life, if you're working towards a goal and it's very specific and clear, those hard days get a little easier. And so we're trying to define that goal and show you how to get there with the details.
You talk about that, like how to have your exit in mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's all there, and it's not a pitch for Quiet Light Services. This book is written by Joe Valley. It's not written by Quiet Light Brokerage. So people can take it if they're thinking about selling their business on their own. It's there. This is going to help them. If they're working with another brokerage firm and they've got a relationship with somebody and they want to sell eventually through that other brokerage firm, this book is definitely going to help them. If you're a buyer out there listening and you're thinking, I want to buy an online business, this is going to give you the inside track to that, because it's going to give you information that may be at a higher level than what your seller's information is at, or what that seller's advisor is if they're inexperienced. You could look at something and go, they missed that ad back. That gives me instant equity. I'm okay paying full price because they did it wrong. And the business is actually worth more because discretionary earnings is $22,000 higher. Kind of, it's great for all parties involved, I think.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I'm looking forward to that. That's June 15th, right?
June 15th on Amazon or Exitpreneur. Yeah. If you go to exitpreneur.io, you can get 3 free chapters as well. The book was written to help, right? First and foremost. So I can't just say that. I have to, walk the walk as well. So I've got the intro and 3 what I call shareable chapters. So I'm giving links to view-only PDFs of the chapters that will live in my Google Drive folder for anybody to review and share with anybody they want. And those chapters are deal structures, negotiating those deal structures, and a full chapter on ad backs as well. And then there's an intro that gives big picture stuff. So they're kind of the three most important chapters that I think somebody can use.
Let me go back to just a couple very common occurrences that happen, which is what do you see as like when you come to a seller? What's the most common things that happen? And first of all, it's valuation. I know that because everybody thinks their business is worth more than it is. And how do you have that conversation with somebody? Do you just say, hey, look, these are the stats, these are comps, and it is what it is? Or is it more of it's black and white?
Yeah. And every business is different, right? There's no two businesses that are alike. So we got to deal with each of them individually. And the first thing that I see, and this is the tide's starting to change on this because we've talked about it enough, but too many, I'd say more than 50% of online entrepreneurs, again, whether it's SaaS content or physical products, are not using accrual accounting. And they may not be using QuickBooks or Xero. So first, you got to get your financials.
Who in this stage of age doesn't use some kind of a QuickBooks or something like that?
I just had a conversation with somebody that's got a business that's probably worth about $15 million. And he does not use QuickBooks or Xero, doesn't even run P&Ls. He just pulls money out of his business when he needs it. And he, looks at his, merchant statement and Shopify, statements and things like that.
Does that affect his valuation?
Yeah. Is it going to instill confidence in buyers? No.
Absolutely not.
And so, that goes to, the risk factor or pillar, or, we talk about what buyers want and fear, and risk is what they fear. And you got a business doing $15 million in revenue, but you don't have any financials to speak of. That's not going to instill confidence in your buyers, and they're not going to pay as much for your business. Whereas if you hired a good quality e-commerce bookkeeper, you can do that probably for less than a car payment every month, and they'll get the numbers right for you. They'll do it in an accrual basis accounting, and they'll present you with profit and loss statements, balance sheets at the end of every month. All I need to do is get an export of that with a monthly view going back as far as possible, and then I can help firm up the true value of your business. See, you got to have that to get in the door with buyers. You got to get in the room. So clear financials will get you in the room. What they'll pay for it is depending upon, trends, risk, balance, growth trends, transferability, documentation, all of these other factors.
Yeah. So once you have that conversation with them about valuation, they go, hey, look, we're in the same ballpark. You've got a range from, there's a risk. Let's say an IT business, we've been looking at IT businesses and business valuations, resources values it at 2.7, 8.7, something like that. And medium is 5.2. And a number of, factors. If the guy leaves the business, there's no IP, there's no reoccurring businesses, he's not going to get an 8.7. He's going to get about 5.2. How do you guys settle on that and then place it on Quiet Light?
Well, we're looking specifically at recent closed transactions that are similar, right? And that's where we're placing the value on the business. We know what the feedback we're getting from buyers are. We know what the average multiple is for an Amazon business, a content business, a SaaS content business, or a SaaS business.
That's pretty standard. FBA business is pretty standard multiple, right?
No. Changing dramatically because of the aggregators.
It's just going up.
Yeah. And the deal structures are changing. Yeah. So you can't go, all right, well, FBA businesses sell for 3 times. It's not the case. It's not the case at all. It's got to be, you got to look at it individually because no two are alike. And some are worth a heck of a lot more than others. Some you're going to sell right away at a 3-time multiple. Some you're going to sell right away at a 6-time multiple. It's something that's never occurred in history, right? These types of businesses that are consistently getting 3 to 4 times discretionary earnings. It's happening, and we're getting more than that in many of the cases.
Wow.
It's looking at it individually, John, and making a decision based upon all factors on risk, growth, transferability, documentation, trends, SKU balance, the owner and how prevalent they are in the business, QuickBooks and Xero and accrual accounting, whether it's content or SaaS as well. If you've got a SaaS business and you got 500 customers or 500 users, but 251 of them come from one company, that's a risk problem, right? 50% of your business is truly with one company, even though you've got 251 paying users underneath that company. It's a risk. And buyers are going to go, well, okay, we got a problem here. We got to pull that value back, or that's what we would do before we listed the business for sale. We're going to look at it from a buyer's point of view and put it all out there. And here's the most important thing. And this is what, when people sell their business on their own, oftentimes they're selling for less than they should, not more than they should. Or they think that, you said earlier, people think their businesses are worth a lot more. I find when they don't have a good grip on their financials, they think it's actually worth less because they might be doing the numbers off of cash accounting and they don't understand that aspect of it, which is okay. But if you price the business properly, you're going to attract more buyers. And there's going to be more competition for your business and more offers. And when you have more eyeballs on the details and more competition, it's going to, get you a better deal structure that's at or over asking price, and it may get pushed up a little bit. The difference is that if you price it really aggressively, buyers are instantly going to go, yeah, that multiple's too high. I get what they're doing here. What I'm going to do is just lowball them. And even with lowballing and negotiating, you don't get up to that properly priced listing, number. It's a psychology thing with buyers. So the best thing you can do as a seller, if you're selling on your own or with an advisor, is make sure it's priced right based upon real market trends, so that you get as many eyeballs on it as possible and as many buyers on it as possible. So hopefully you'll be in a situation where you've got multiple offers and you get to choose your buyer and choose your deal structure. Because it's not just about going under a letter of intent, it's getting all the way through due diligence and then having a nice, healthy training and transition period so that you can move on to your next adventure. Or if you choose to do an equity role, it's somebody that you trust, and so on and so forth.
So this due diligence process, how long does you usually see that takes?
It's generally 3 to 4 weeks, not a whole lot more time than that.
Are you seeing these larger funds outsourcing the due diligence to somebody else? No,
not necessarily. If they started doing it initially, they're now doing it all in-house for the most part. Yes. Some of the smaller ones might be outsourcing it a little bit because that's part of their investor requirements until they bring it in-house.
Is there a big 125-point checklist that they run through?
And each of them are different. I know that there's a company out there called Centurica. It's owned by Chris Yates. And Centurica has a checklist like that. They'll look at it depending upon the type of business. It's CENTURICA.com. They've got that checklist, and they'll run through all of those points for an FBA business, for a Shopify store, for a content site SaaS business. They'll do all aspects of that research for you in due diligence, checking the numbers. They'll do a live screen share with the owner of the business, and they'll give you a healthy report at the end of it all. And that report will tell you what the strengths and weaknesses of the business are, what you should pay attention to in terms of potential problems. And really at the end of the day, what it tells you is where you can strengthen up the business and have it even, a stronger value when you eventually exit.
Yeah.
And it's somebody that's done it a few times. It just, you should do it. You should run your own financial analysis and check everything yourself, but have them do it as well.
Oh yeah. I was working with this guy a lot younger than I was, and he was trying to buy this e-commerce business with his jeans, and they got into it and they saw, well, most of the sales were coming from masks. That business is dead, man. This is not worth anything, what you think it is.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, this should never been listed that way, right? I mean, I've had those valuation calls as everybody else on the team here at QuietLight. And the reality is that, that's a temporary blip in revenue. It's going to change, and buyers are going to look at it and go, no, I don't think so. And so I'm shocked that even when a letter of intent.
I'm just like bordering on fraud almost, just saying your sales are, $5 million in jeans, but 3.5 of it came from masks.
What an incredible waste of everyone's time.
Yeah.
Right. Yours, the seller, the buyer, everybody involved. You gotta get ugly fast or quick or something I forget. Chuck on the team uses that phrase and he corrected me. I'm not using it right, but you gotta be honest. You got to put the details out there, the expose the warts of the business in a package so that people understand, its strengths and weaknesses, and get through all of that before you go under letter of intent. When you do that, you do it right, you get to closing. When you hide things and, like you said, borderline fraud stuff, it's a waste of everybody's time, and you're not going to get to closing. There's no point in going under LOI if you're not going to get to closing.
I want to go back to the Expert Premier's playbook. Now, it's easy to say, look, here's what you should do to get the best valuation of the company. But sometimes that takes, I've got to go find those resources to put the team together to help me in that area. Do you recommend certain areas, or you say, well, just,
Yeah. Finally, we've been referring people out to, tax advisors, CPAs, e-commerce bookkeepers, lenders, lenders for inventory, SBA lenders, attorneys for years at QuietLight. And finally, I put together a list, and it's on the partner page at exitpreneur.io. If you go to the partner page there, it will give you resources of people that do all the different aspects of, this part of what we do that will help you. If you need a good e-commerce bookkeeper, there's probably 5 or 6 there that you could choose from. If you need a contract attorney, which you eventually will when you sell your business, there's some in there.
Absolutely.
If we can help you with the value of your business and, reverse engineering a path to that eventual exit, but we're not tax advisors, right? So we've got some tax advisors in there as well that can help you with getting a much clearer understanding of what's going to be left over after the sale. I talk about it in the book. I give you ballpark numbers, but those numbers are subject to change based upon the political climate and administration. If capital gains taxes go up or down, you never know. But you really got to do your own numbers at the end of the day to determine, how much you're going to have left after the sale. Because exiting for X amount isn't really as important as how much am I going to have left from that amount when I'm all done.
Right. Do you find anybody that, looks at the wisdom that you've instilled through them to going, hey man, I've got a renewed spirit in this. I'm just going to keep the business and just stay with
Always.
it.
Yeah. Always. Yeah. That's awesome. Right. It's great. I had talk about it in the book there a little bit. I had a business that was listed for sale, and it was in the mid 6-figure range. And it was being sold because the owner's husband was being transferred to Japan. And she's like, I'm going, obviously. And some of her business was tied to local vendors in the San Francisco area, which is problematic, right? Because you can't sell to somebody in Maine if you have a business that is dependent upon local vendors that you go visit in San Francisco. But it was a must sell situation. So we went ahead and listed the business, and there was actually interest and activity for about a 3-week period. And then the transfer fell through, and she said, look, I'm going to go ahead and pull the listing and work on those things that we've talked about that should have been worked on prior to listing it. And she came back 18 months later, and the business was worth, more than double. And she wound up with, nearly a 7-figure exit because she went back and fixed the business to make it fully transferable, not location dependent, cleaned it up. Financials were in perfect shape. She had multiple offers within a couple of weeks and ended up selling the business for all cash.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've taken 8,000 conversations, instilled this wisdom in a book. How, and it's definitely going to help a seller. How would it help a buyer?
Oh, because the buyer now will have a full understanding of how these businesses are valued. And when they look at a listing, they'll be able to look at it and say, they got this right or they got that wrong. They'll be able to determine, the best way as a buyer to get instant equity for a business that's growing like crazy is if the seller, presents it on a cash basis, because they're, especially an inventory-based business. And it's the same is true for SaaS and content. That if it's cash, that net income is always lagging 30 or 60 days on a content site. Or if it's a product business, let's say they've got $300,000 in inventory on hand. On a cash basis, that's just $300,000 off the net income of the business. You sell that business for that, and your multiple is 4, you just lost 1.2 million. If a buyer sees that, they can jump on that, make an over asking purchase price, all cash, and they're gaining a ton of instant equity instantly. So they're going to learn, what people are doing right, what people are doing wrong, and be able to analyze that in the businesses that they're looking at. Wasn't written for them, but it's definitely a side benefit for them.
Yeah. What do you think of marketplaces? Like, just an example of the Airbnb. I'm not saying that large, but the smaller marketplaces where you need to aggregate buyers and sellers together, and nothing really grows until there's interaction and commerce between the two.
There's a place for it, right? And it's not for a business that is $500,000, $2 million, $3 million. Because the nuances are, you're not gonna get it right first.
You can't get the scale right.
Right. So if somebody has a smaller business, let's say it's $100,000, and they want to list it on their own on a marketplace, this book will help them value it tremendously. They'll get it right. You mentioned something about emotions earlier on. What most people will not be prepared for, and I talk about it in the book, is the emotional stress that is going to happen when you are, 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away, a week away from $100,000, $1 million, $5 million. You are going to stress out. You're so close, but it hasn't happened yet. Your transaction will fall off the rails at some point. It's going to go sideways. You just have to have the emotional fortitude to stick to it, not lose your cool, and not, renegotiate the price of the business unless it's done with math and logic, right? That's the problem with marketplaces. If you don't have somebody helping you in a sense, right? Somebody with experience helping you and holding your hand. They're okay, and there's a place for them. Eventually, QuietLight will have a smaller, listing marketplace, because we just get so many that are coming our way. And we just try to help them so that they get larger, but some of them are just absolutely ready to sell. And eventually we'll have that, and there is a place for it.
And they're just capped out. Sometimes you get in an industry, you build a marketplace, and you're just capped out. You're really not going to grow anymore. I'm going to give you an example of this. I was a co-founder of TurboSquid, and it's a marketplace for 3D assets. It took 20 years to sell that. Shutterstock finally bought it, but it took 20 years.
Wow. Yeah. Well, what I see as a marketplace in this situation is just putting buyers and sellers together where they can, look at a listing and make a transaction decision based upon the information that the seller puts up there on the marketplace. The book will help them put accurate information up there on the marketplace, or prepare their business for sale before they put it up there on the marketplace. But they won't have somebody helping them with the transaction in between. They may have somebody that, moves the transaction from point A to point B to point C within the marketplace to help them go through the processes. But it's not somebody that's going to have those deep conversations with them about, why they should or shouldn't accept this particular deal, or maybe you want to work with this seller instead of that buyer instead of that buyer. In that situation where, that business sold for $5.5 million when an aggregator offered $2 million. There was a multiple offers, and they were almost ready to agree and sign a letter of intent for one of them. And then another offer came in that was $1 million more. And emotionally,
two completely different aggregators, just $1 million difference in an
offer.
Yeah.
Yes. The seller, she was distraught about it, right? May sound strange, but she had her mind set. She was done. She picked one, liked the people, and had made the decision that that's who she was going to work with. And then another one comes in out of left field. And, you got to do your homework and research on that aggregator to make sure they're legitimate, make sure they're truly funded already, and not going out and raising funds for this sale. That's not what you want. And it was very, very tough. I know it sounds odd, another $1 million, tough decision. Just take it, right? No, it was, are they real? Can we really close? Is it too good to be true? And the reality was her business was amazing. She had multiple offers. If it fell through, she was going to get it anyway. Prior to being an entrepreneur, she was a branch manager at a bank making $60,000 a year. So we did the math on that. What does this mean? How many years are you going to get paid for with this extra $1 million? And it worked. We stuck through it. And it was tough for her emotionally at the end in particular, because, it's never real until the money hits your bank account. And eventually did. She's very
there's 2 points in that. I remember selling my business, and how many times you actually check your bank account to make sure that it comes in after the LOI signed, after it's agreed to, and then you're like, check the bank account, and it is. You just go, holy shit.
I finished my transaction up with the transfer of all of the assets on a Friday. It hit Friday afternoon, right? And so once I transfer the assets, then the funds were supposed to be transferred from escrow to my bank account, and so I did it on a Friday afternoon, so monies couldn't be released until Monday. That was the longest weekend of my life. I had no business. I had no money. I was terrified, but it's not real until the money hits your account. I have another client that, they had the money hit their bank account, 7 figures had hit their bank account when the market took a dive last year because COVID hit and things were being shut down. And so it's something like March 17th or 27th of 2020. Things just looked awful, except they just had 7 figures hit their bank account. So they were like, this is pretty good. It's a good time to get some money and maybe make some investments. But they went through emotional hell for a while because their transaction was so tough and things fell through and got it back on the rails. Those are the things that marketplaces do not prepare you for, and they don't help you with that. And I think having an individual advisor at your side is definitely necessary for the larger transactions because of that.
Hey, I'm going to ask you one more question because we're running out of time. When you said when an offer is real, somebody else coming in with $1 million, what I'm seeing a lot of, and this has happened, maybe 5 times in the last year, is a private equity firm will come in, make an offer like, we'll give you $5 million for it, or we'll give you $20 million for it. And then it just screws up every other offer that you worked on before because it's 2 times what it was. But then you go through this and it's not real. I mean, they're going to put you through 90 days of due diligence, and they'll probably readjust your offer, and it's probably going to go down. And then they want some conditions on there, like you got to stay on for 3 years. Have you seen that where it's just not real? Yeah.
No, because we vet these buyers, we push them through a process. And our letters of intent are very, very clear. Sometimes it's a letter of intent that the buyer presents, but there are certain things that need to be in there. You got to lay out the deal points in a crystal clear way, because those deal points are what's going to wind up in the asset purchase agreement. And if it's a private equity firm that's used to working capital pegs, we'll make it crystal clear. There is no working capital peg that will be applied to this business.
Yeah. So you're not trying to sneak anything into this conceptual letter of agreement covers everything you talked about, what this offer is going to be. And they say, yes, I'm agreement. Yes, I'm in agreement.
Yeah. When you leave anything up to interpretation, you're leaving yourself up to renegotiation in due diligence. And, talking about that in I'm not even sure what chapters at this point, but negotiations that you can get for free at extrapreneur.io, it talks about that everything in due diligence, if there's a renegotiation, it should only be with math and logic. If your seller's discretionary earnings was truly off by $10,000, you had it $10,000 higher, there was a currency conversion issue where it's really $10,000 lower. That is not an emotional decision in terms of renegotiation. It's math and logic. You're under LOI for 4 times. 4 times 10,000 is $40,000. List price of the business, goes down by 40,000. You might be able to say, totally get that, but we've been, under LOI, and another 30 days has passed. The SDE has actually climbed by $20,000. So let's just call it a wash. I see that happen as well. You've got to build trust early on. You've got to put, by full disclosure in the package that you're talking about with your business, you've got to vet your buyer very closely. You've got to put all of the details properly in a letter of intent that clearly explains what the deal structure is. And then everything else is math and logic. I don't recall the last time I had a deal or we had a deal fall apart in due diligence because a buyer was just trying to renegotiate for the sake of renegotiating.
Yeah. And the way you said that, if it's left up in interpretation, you're back into renegotiation.
Yeah.
It's really important because I had this one experience. I was in on a deal and I had to bring in an investor on it. And we had an LOI in place and it was signed. And then they got on the phone and they started pissing on each other's couch. You're like, wait a minute. We've already talked about this. And it was so important what you're talking about right now, just to have this trust up front and then vetted these buyers.
Yeah. I won't go under letter of intent with a buyer unless the person with the money is actually on the call. Somebody says, yeah, my father-in-law is investing the money and he's going to give you the money for it. I'm like, okay, well, put him on the phone. Let's have him part of this call. We're not going to be going under letter of intent with you because, we don't have the full confidence that that person that's funding it is actually, on board with you. So we need you both on the call and in agreement with this before we sign a letter of intent. Same thing with SBA lenders. Look, if you come to the deal and you're an SBA buyer, awesome. Love that. I think it's better for the seller because they're going to get more cash and they keep the business for an extra 60 days and make more money. Emotionally, that's incredibly hard for the seller. Most of them choose not to go with an SBA lender if they've got multiple cash offers as well. Sure. But I will not go under a letter of intent without having the SBA lender on a call with a buyer and seller.
Already, it's like Live Oak Bank is saying already qualified, or need the bank to say?
Oh, yeah? No. We've got to have a pre-approval. The bank's got to be on board with it. We won't sign a letter of intent until the bank's fully on board with it. But I also want the buyer and seller and the bank on a call together, talking about timelines and setting expectations before we sign a letter of intent. That way, everyone is on the same page and the emotions are not as high when the bank ends up, over promising and under delivering on when they're going to get that commitment letter, which they, tend to do, right? They speak a different language. They live in a different world. They may say, yeah, we're going to close, in 6 weeks. Closing to them may be signing documents or getting that commitment letter. And then it's another 30 days to funding. So you've got to make sure everybody's speaking the same language. And the best thing to do is get on a call. We're all there. Let's do Zoom. I want to see the whites of your eyes. Let's do it. And just make sure we're on the same page. It's the best way to do it. You can't leave anything, up to interpretation.
How important that LOI and that conceptual agreement is. Joe, we running out of time, but I got to tell you, I wish this book was around a lot earlier because I've learned a number of things here today. And you got the book's called Exit Entrepreneurs.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes. Twice already.
I surveyed a bunch of people in the industry and I gave them 2 titles. Narrowed it down to 2, and one was Incredible Exits, and the other was Exitpreneur. It was just Exitpreneur.
Exitpreneur's Playbook coming out.
That's what it is. Everybody chose the other title, and I went to go with the Exitpreneur's Playbook. Yeah, so you can find it on Amazon or at exitpreneur.io if you want to get some free chapters.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate this.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.